that phrase, "you didn't build that," is something that has festered over the last several years. And we've seen it erupt over just the last couple of weeks. He calls our achievers, our top achievers, our nation of builders and makers, society's lottery winners, as if it's some sort of random Powerball that people work themselves
See, I learned a lot.
You know, this woman lays it on thicker than a John Deere manure spreader. And the Clintons never answer questions, they evade them.
Because I hate it when open borders advocates and activists get away with this inflammatory language that somehow those of us who believe in the rule of law want to throw every last illegal alien into some cattle car. How can we not sell freedom? It's the best product on the face of this earth.
Right.
And it is against the grain of our founding fathers' principles that people own. People own and should profit from the fruits of their labor and the fruits of their minds. Immediately following that quote was something even worse, where he was denigrating and mocking people and saying that people who had made it in our country were not as smart as everybody else, didn't work as hard as everyone else. Of course they did. They were a heck of a lot smarter than you, Barack Obama. That's why they've made so much money and fulfilled people's wants and needs.
And this is one of my all-time pet peeves. You know, it's not the presence of bias that's a problem in the so-called mainstream media. It's always the pretense of objectivity and the double standards.
It's funny she says that I'm so negative, because every day I wake up in the morning and I can't believe that I can do what I do. Only in America can I make a living and put food on the table running my mouth off. That's an amazing thing, and I marvel at that, and I have a fierce appreciation for the First Amendment in this country, particularly as a woman of color. But I ended up writing what I think is an incredibly joyful book, and I think it's time, especially for free market conservatives like myself and others who are fighting in the public sphere, to fill this vacuum. And these are stories, it's a treasury of stories that you can actually read out loud and share with your kids. Well, because it's based on a lie, for one thing. In fact, much of the language that she used at Tuskegee, she had used in a People magazine interview late last year, where she was trying to identify with the struggle, okay? And this was post-Ferguson. So obviously it's very calculated, the statements that the First Lady makes. And this bitter half politics, I've called her the bitter half ever since they came into office, she's a master of this kind of social agitation.
Well, you know, the culture of corruption runs very deep. I mean, it has been an incurable disease in the Democratic Party, and they've become completely inured to it among voters. And it really, of course, does not help that we have this whitewashing media that has covered her from back in the days when the White House Travel Office and Chinagate and all the rest, when Sidney Blumenthal was, you know, in full bloom in Washington, D.C.
It's the narcissism of Washington, D.C. It's that beltway mentality that these politicians are the ones that create jobs and create wealth and invest things. These government bureaucrats and these political hacks, they take people's money. They do not make money. They do not create wealth. Look, I want people to understand, and particularly children, homeschooled children, I want grandparents to be reading this to their grandkids, that it's the free exchange of voluntary exchange of goods and services millions of times a day that happens in this country, that it's the American exceptionalism. This is what we should not be ashamed of it. I think that in layperson's language, in plain language, this order sent a very clear message to the imperial dictators at the Obama White House, and that is in your face. They said no in rejecting the request for a stay of the injunction. Part of this book is a manifesto against the wealth shaming of the progressives and Obama. What was he doing last week? He was calling people who are successful society's lottery winners. Yeah. Right. This is the guy who tells people at a certain point you've earned enough money. No, you're not the decider of our success and happiness. That's the American people. That's our history. And it's deriving the joy and the pride and restoring that again. And I would like to see every Republican candidate be able to talk about this in a competent manner. I think that's our problem. But, you know, my answer to negative speech has always been more and better speech. And that's why I have not stopped doing what I do.